This was interesting for me because the last two films have so much language, and sadly, they were mistranslated often. Because I was playing with a less correct language. For those who understood English, you could probably see it if you knew your English and Spanish, you could tell. The Bollywood film is using mistranslated captions from other Bollywood films. And the last two pieces, by the way, are part of a series of 7 films that I call foreign films. Because when I was a kid, the films, I'm a poet as well, and I was interested in putting text with image, although I'm seeing all the interesting problems and curlicues of that project. But when I would go to foreign films, it was where I'd see subtitles. And subtitles are so strange because they go too long or they go too short, or if you know the language, you see where they're wrongly translated. But it's also an additional image to the image itself, right? It's letters. Letters have their own visual component. It's how we read with our eyes. So I decided to do a series with poet friends called Foreign Films. And ideally, I would love them to be in a museum where all 7 of them are kind of laid out, so you kind of went from one to the next. To have this sense of this sort of dosage of language and inhibition of mind. Do you have some questions? Spanish. Go ahead.
In the film, the future is behind you.
Sí.
In the end, isto foi uma película, me parece que has encontrado em arquivo, is an archival image, no? Film.
Yeah. And you're probably asking about the truth of it, right?
No. Bueno, penso que se é uma película que está no arquivo de uma família, deve ser uma película por informação. E aí, depois dessa película, has escrito texto que...
Oh yes, yes. Because that film is a fiction. Okay? This is I don't consider it... I think the hint is there. The Future's Behind You, I was doing a trilogy on suburbia, and at one point my friend with the bags of film that I mentioned earlier came in and I put up these beautiful 16mm reversal, for those of you who know, reversal film, that maybe had never been looked at. And I said this would be great for a film on suburbia because the whole idea of immigration to the United States, and this idea we become American when we settle in suburbia. And so I began to edit the piece, and basically it's not in Germany, and they're not Jewish. It's footage from Europe, 1930 to 38. I think it's actually, yeah, 30 to 38, and it's these 2 girls growing up. So I was interested in the way the 2 girls become genderized, you know, the little tomboy becomes so femme. I don't know, do you have a word in Spanish for femme? I don't know what the word would be. Becomes feminine, femenino, and then also how in home movies in general as a genre, and I've worked with home movies before, is what's outside the frame. And there's a world outside the frame, not only the world of the family, but the world of history. And it's always ignored. So everybody like primps and prompts, presents themselves. In a way, all these films are also about presentation. How do you present yourself? Perils, they all stand up to a flat view like old silent movies. Mayhem, in a way, how do you present yourself as a sexual being? You know, their poses. Their costumes. In The Future's Behind You, all home movies, they all go smile to the camera. And so I'm interested in the transformation of the children, in the exterior world, and then I'm interested in how we tell history. And so I asked some key questions there. There's kind of meta questions. Who's behind the camera? What's missing from the picture? You know, another picture that's not here. So I'm trying to suggest, I'm trying to lever, I'm trying to upset the kind of norm of how we tell stories. I don't know whose movies they belong to. I have names on the boxes they came on, but they were found by my friend in a garage somewhere at a garage sale with books. So the family has not made an archive of it. In fact, they stuck it in the closet, which many people do with their, you know, you shoot your films and your slides from trips and you put it in a closet, and then the children don't want them. You know, don't have a projector, or have never looked at them. It looked as if they'd never been looked at, to be honest. But I do feel like I said earlier that if someone from the family was in one of the audiences when the film is shown, and if they say, how did you know my grandmother was Jewish or my great-grandmother was Jewish, I would not be surprised. Because I feel like sometimes I look at the work so deeply that I feel like I'm, you know, myth probably, but I feel like I'm pulling out the truth somewhere there. Another example of that, and then I'll get back to the futures behind you if you wish, in Mayhem, when the girls are pulling up the skirts, there was a Japanese phrase that I stuck in because it sounded right, and of course I heard it thousands of times. And it turns out, finally, my friend could interpret it for me, and she said, it's very formal Japanese, saying, please, if you will. So it was perfect, you know, it really fit the piece. But The Future Behind You is a very rich film for me because it's inspired the project I'm working on now in Rome. I had read a biography of Percy Shelley, and Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein, the English poet. And their story is incredible, an incredible melodrama, which, as you can tell, I'm attracted to, although I like to make a little ironic. And, but I said, how can I do this as a feature film and not make it ordinary? And then I had this epiphany that I could do imaginary home movies. Not just tell an imaginary story using real home movies, but do imaginary home movies from 1812 to 1820, which is when they were together. There was no cinema then. But I'm shooting it as if there's somebody in the genre of home movies where people come up to the camera and they say hello, and they have a child, and they present the child. So that's what I've been shooting, 16 millimeter, and it's actually, I think it could be fantastic. We'll see.